Okay, so good morning. As Barbara mentioned, my name is Lindsay Gordon, and I am a project manager for the Office of Public School Construction. I started out in the full day kindergarten program, so any of you who do have full day kinder projects, you've probably spoken to me at one point or another. I now also work on a majority of the school facility programs, which we will get into today. Okay, so a little bit about the Office of Public School Construction, or OPSC. We are under the authority of the State of California's Department of General Services, and we staff the State Allocation Board, or the SAB. OPSC and the State Allocation Board implement and administer a $42 billion voter-approved school facility construction program. So today we'll discuss the history and purpose of the school facility program. SFP was originally known as the Leroy F. Green Facilities Act and was created in 1998. SFP provides funding for construction projects in the form of per pupil grants, with the option to receive funding for supplemental grants such as site development, acquiring new sites, excessive cost hardship, and other specific costs as they may be applicable to your project. The SFP gives independence to districts to determine the projects that best fit their district and their campuses. And with that, SFP does require that school districts accept responsibility for the outcome of that project. So the SFP provides funding to assist school districts in the construction and modernization of school facilities. For school districts with new construction projects, so those that are adding student capacity to their site, the state and local share is a 50-50 split of the total eligible project funding. For projects where they are modernizing buildings on the site and not adding any student capacity, the state and local share is a 60-40 split, respectively. Little history of the bond funding. So as we know, SFP originally was funded in 1998 with Proposition 1A, which was a $9.2 billion school dollar bond initiative, and it was actually the largest of its kind passed in our nation's history. Prop 1A allocated $6.7 billion to the K-12. After that, we had Prop 47, which allocated $11.4 billion in November of 2002. In March of 2004, Prop 55 was passed with $10 billion. And Proposition 1D in November of 2006 allocated $7.5 billion. The most recent bond, which was in November of 2016 that passed, was Proposition 51, which allocated $7 billion. So the status of all of these funds and bonds are included in our monthly SAB agendas. So Prop 51, which authorized the $7 billion for the school facility program, allocated $3 billion to new construction projects, $3 billion to modernization projects, $500 million to the charter school facility program, and $500 million to the career tech educational facilities program. And we're going to go over all of these program and details in the next few slides. So what is the purpose of new construction funding? New construction funding is meant for school districts with a growing population and not enough classrooms within their district to properly house their students. Funding can be used for a brand new site. It can be also just used for new classrooms on an existing site. It can also be used to build libraries, multi-purpose rooms, gyms, admin space, and other facilities. So how do we get eligibility for new construction? New construction eligibility is based on projection of the need to house pupils. So when updating eligibility for new construction projects, OPSC looks at the current classroom capacity of the school district and compares that to the projected enrollment in 5 years. If there are more students than classrooms available to load them in, then the school district would have a positive eligibility. Now keep in mind, this is a simplified explanation of how new construction eligibility is established and updated. So when updating eligibility, if you have any questions, please reach out to the county project manager for help. So eligibility is typically updated on a yearly basis or when a project is being processed. The difference is that for school districts with a small student population, those that have a 2,501 pupils or less, they may lock in their eligibility. So that lock would start upon the SAB approval of the eligibility and is good for 3 years from that approval date all the way up to November 1st of that third year. So if they were to get a update in the January 2021 State Allocation Board, they would be locked until November 1st, 2024, and they can use that eligibility up until that point. So funding is provided on a 50-50 state and local share basis, and it starts with a base grant using per pupil grant amounts. The per pupil amount is updated every year with the construction cost index. So if a new construction project is for one K-6 classroom, we would take that base grant would be determined by multiplying the loading standard of up to 25 pupils per classroom and multiply that by the current per pupil grant. And so this would give us that base grant. So we would take 25 multiplied by the 12,628, that is the per pupil grant amount for K-6. And that base grant would provide funding for design, construction, testing, inspection, furniture, and any other costs that may be associated with that project. So something to note is that applications for new construction must be submitted prior to students occupying that new classroom for instruction. Districts are also able to request supplemental grants as they are eligible for the project. So new construction eligibility must be updated to the enrollment year in which the application is being processed. So eligibility must be current. So let's say a project was submitted to OPSC in the 2017-2018 enrollment year, but now in the 2020-2021 enrollment year, the project is being processed and may be funded. Then eligibility must be updated to the 2020-2021 enrollment year. So a notification is sent out 90 days prior to the processing of the application. So this gives districts a chance to update that eligibility. So as an example of what enrollment year you would need to submit for, if a school district is submitting a funding application maybe in the summer, so in between 2 school years, it would need to use the enrollment from the previous year. If you're submitting after November 1st, you would submit for the current year you're in. So there are many options for projecting enrollment and many ways to go about it. If you have questions, please, again, contact the county project manager, and we have all those contacts at the end of the presentation. Okay, so we've discussed how we can provide new facilities for your sites. But let's talk about how we can provide funds for buildings that you have that are aging. So the purpose of modernization is to extend the useful life of existing facilities or enhance that physical environment of your school. The projects can be used, or applications can be submitted for projects that are currently going on at the site or projects that have already been completed. Funding can also be used to demolish and replace facilities of like kind as long as square footage isn't being added. There are some exceptions to this rule based on ADA requirements. For more information on the ADA requirements, I would access the school facility regulations, which is 1859.79.2. Eligibility for modernization. So how are you eligible to get funding for a modernization project? So unlike new construction, modernization is site specific. So the eligibility that is created for one site may only be used at that site. Eligibility is created from permanent buildings that are at least 25 years old or portable buildings that are at least 20 years old. Eligibility is based on classroom count and square footage of the site and those aged buildings, along with the enrollment of the site. So once established, eligibility is not required to be updated unless it's beneficial to their district. So 50-year-old buildings do receive an increase per pupil grant amount just because those 50-year-old buildings can be more difficult to modernize. And if a school district is updating a 50-year-old building and its utilities, there also may be an increased funding for that. So just like new construction, funding for modernization is based on a per pupil grant amount and is provided on a 60-40 state split. So pupil grants requested in modernization are not based on the classrooms in the project, unlike new construction. Districts may choose to request as many pupils as they like as long as it works with their project. So supplemental grants. Supplemental grants are available to help with the uniqueness of individual projects within the new construction and modernization grants. So some of those that may be specific to your project could be like an automatic fire detection or alarm system, maybe site acquisition, site development, multi-level buildings, things of that nature. So we're now going to talk about some of the other mini programs that are within the school facility program umbrella. So with facility hardship. Now, if you have any of your school sites that look like this picture, which is a dry rot, we highly recommend you reach out to our office to help with this, as this is a health and safety risk. Facility hardship is different than the new construction or modernization, as we don't use that eligibility. So what is facility hardship? Facilities that are in need of repairs due to an existing health and safety threat, like that picture, could be dry rot, could be mold. There's a multitude of things that could be wrong. Could also be facilities that were lost or destroyed due to a fire, flood, earthquakes, or other disasters. Or facilities that maybe pose a risk to occupants in the event of an earthquake. And that is a part of our Seismic Mitigation program, which is a subset of the facility hardship. So there's 3 types of projects within the facility hardship program. It could be replacement of an entire school depending on the damage, replacement of individual buildings, or rehabilitation of individual buildings. So replacement funding is provided at a 50-50 split, and the rehabilitation funding is a 60-40 split. There is an upcoming presentation on the facility and seismic mitigation program coming up that will discuss the intricacies of this program. So seismic mitigation, as I said, is a subset of the facility hardship program, and it provides for the repair or reconstruction or replacement for those seismic issues in Category 2 school buildings. So seismic mitigation, and as well as the facility hardship, does not draw from the new construction or modernization eligibility. It's based on the cost estimate. And again, we will have a presentation that will go into detail with this. So another program within the school facilities is the Career Technical Education Facilities program. So the CTE program at a site is a study that involves a multi-year sequence of courses that integrates core academic knowledge with the technical and occupational knowledge to provide students with pathways and opportunities that may differ from others. So Prop 51, as we said, allocated $500 million for the CTE facilities. So CTE was established in 2006, and it provides funding to school districts, county offices of education, and joint powers of authority. It's for the construction of new CTE facilities, maybe modernizing or reconfiguring existing CTE facilities, or the purchase of equipment for those programs. Something to note with the CTE program is it functions differently than our new construction or mod programs. The CTE program is not about adding capacity or increasing lifespans of buildings, but specifically for those CTE programs. It's facilities and buildings for a specialized education path. So in June of 2019, the State Allocation Board approved $250 million plus any remaining funds for the 6th funding cycle of the CTE. And funds, they are now exhausted for this round. If you did have a CTE project, it most likely went to the board in fall of last year. But for projects that did not receive funding in the 6th funding round, will remain on a list for 18 months. And if bond authority is returned during those 18 months, this could be from project rescissions or withdrawals. Funding may be provided to projects that are on that list in order of merit. So a quick example of how the CTE program worked when it came to applying. There are 2 pathways when it comes to CTE. So districts who are not construction ready or who were not construction ready may request a reservations of funds, which would allow them to move forward with their project with the confidence of state funding. So for projects that did reserve their funds in the beginning, before they can receive those funds, they must submit DSA and CDE approvals to OPSC. Okay, now another program within SFP is our Charter School Facilities Program. Now this provided funding for classroom facilities, new construction, of course, adding capacity, or rehabilitation, reconfiguration, or modernization of district-owned facilities that were at least 15 years old for the charter use program. It's a 50-50 program split, 50% of the state grant, and then 50% would be school district or applicant contribution or loan. So something to know is charter school and the career tech program do not offer financial hardship. They do offer the ability to apply for a loan. So applicants for charter schools may apply on their own behalf, or a school district could also apply for a school district, or excuse me, for a charter school. The charter school must be a classroom-based instruction. They cannot be an online-based charter. The charter school must submit an approved charter petition in place at the time of application submittal. And again, Prop 51 allocated $500 million in bond authority. However, these funds are currently exhausted, but as loan payments are returned, there may be filing rounds in the future, so stay tuned for that. So some things to note with charter schools, they also have the ability for preliminary apportionments, just like similar to the reservation of funds in charters in the career tech. It allows for charters who are not construction ready to reserve funding and be able to move forward with their projects knowing that they will have access to state funding. So by receiving a preliminary apportionment, applicants can wait to see if they will receive funding before incurring expenses to design a project. Charters will have 4 years to receive all necessary state approval and become construction ready. The preliminary apportionment is an estimate of project funding and includes an inflator factor. So final funding is based on final apportionment application. Some important program requirements for the charter school is that the charter must demonstrate that they are financially sound, and this is determined by the California School Finance Authority. The charter must also be able to show that they can cover the costs and obligations for their matching share of the project, as well as having key staff with at least 2 years of operating experience for California charter schools. For a charter school, the title must be held by either the school district, a local government entity, or the charter school itself. So for the special charter requirements, please review Education Code 17078.63. Okay, so now we're going to move on to financial hardship. The purpose of financial hardship is to assist districts and COEs that may not be able to provide their matching share for their project. So if a school district has a new construction, modernization, or facility hardship project, but they know they will not have enough for the local share of their project, financial hardship can help. So for new construction projects that are not a financial hardship, the state share for a $1 million project would be $500,000, and then the district would contribute $500,000 as well. Now, a new construction project for a district that does have financial hardship requested, for a $1 million project, if a district can only contribute $100,000 to that project, the state share would still be $500,000, and the financial hardship share would be $400,000 to help still reach that $1 million project. So there are two phases to determine if a district is eligible for financial hardship. They must pass phase 1 before we move on to phase 2. So districts must be levying maximum developer fee as justified under the law, as well as meet one of the following criteria, which would be long-term debt of 60% or more of debt capacity, successful voter bond election within the last 2 years, be a county office of education, or a total bonding capacity of $5 million or less. If the school district feels they do not fall under any of these categories but still believes their financial hardship, then other evidence may be presented and approved by the board. So phase 2 of determining if a district is eligible for financial hardship. OPSC reviews facility funds to determine the amount of funds available for a district match. OPSC reviews funds 21 through 50. They review revenues and expenditures for up to the last 3 years, review transfers in or out of facility funds, and they may examine special reserve funds for availability, or available funds that may be reduced by encumbrances. So funding and bridge financing. If available funds are less than the district match, the state will fund the difference between the district match and the district's available funds. Qualifying COEs and districts may request site and or design funding prior to requesting full funding. So a financial hardship approval is valid for 6 months and may be reviewed again after that. There's also the bridge financing policy. This enables a school district to borrow money from another source, and funds may be used for any expenditures that fall within the scope of eligible expenditures for projects on the financial hardship application. Now, if you do plan on using bridge financing, we highly encourage you to reach out to OPSC first to make sure you manage all those things correctly. So for the review process of financial hardship, a district will submit their funding application, so application 5004, and they'll check the box for financial hardship. OPSC will notify the district 90 days prior to the application being processed. Districts will then submit their financial hardship documents within 60 days of that notification. And financial hardship approval and the funding applications will be processed concurrently. So for more information on financial hardship, we do have upcoming workshops to go over this information. So a little note on how the project lifecycle works. Before coming into the Office of Public School Construction and submitting funding, a district will go to Department of Education and the Division of the State Architect to receive plan approvals. With those approvals, the district will submit it with the funding application. Within that time period, OPSC will then determine if the district is eligible for funding and process the application. That application will then go to the State Allocation Board for apportionment, and the district will participate in priority funding. After funds are received, DSA will provide construction oversight and a project certification. The district will submit substantial progress and expenditure reports. And then local auditors will help with the closeout expenditures and the final audit. So unfunded approvals. So once a funding application is accepted by OPSC, it will be processed in date order and brought forward to the SAB for an unfunded approval. So as a reminder, unfunded approvals are not a guarantee of funding, but they do enable a project to receive an apportionment and eventually a fund release when we have our bond sales, which typically happen twice a year in the spring and in the fall. So districts must participate in priority funding in order to receive an apportionment and fund release for their recently SAB approved project. So what is priority funding? Which is the process that was created to allow projects to receive their apportionment by the SAB. So projects with unfunded approvals are placed on an unfunded list, or what is called the lack of AB 55 loans, so that they may receive an apportionment and fund release. And again, it happens twice a year with those annual bond sales. So the SFP regulations require that a school district submits a written statement that requests to convert their unfunded approval to an apportionment. So OPSC can help with these requests that are being submitted prior to their submittal to verify their validity and completeness. We can also help preview those certification letters if you would like. There's also templates on our website that we recommend you review. So these are our current priority and funding rounds. You will be notified when your project has been SAB approved and when you need to participate in these rounds. So after SAB approval, projects have two chances to receive funding. A request stating that a district will participate must be submitted within the request period. And if a district does not participate, they will receive an occurrence of non-participation. A district must also submit a valid fund release form within 90 days of the apportionment, which we will talk about next. So if the school district does not participate in the two sequential priority funding rounds, then the project will be rescinded and no funding will be provided. To receive a fund release, so now our project has received its apportionment, and the school district must now submit the form SAB 5005, which is the fund release authorization form. If a school district does not submit this form within the 90 days, it will receive an occurrence of non-participation and will revert back to an unfunded approval. And it will need to wait until the next bond sale. So if the project does not participate in the second priority round, the project will be rescinded and funding will not be available for that project. So it is important to note that a signed grant agreement must either be submitted prior to or on the same day as the 5005. So if the fund release form is signed prior to the grant agreement, it will be returned. So grant agreements. Grant agreements are a very useful tool on the requirements of your project and the eligible expenditures associated with that project. Districts will receive their grant agreements after an unfunded approval is awarded, and it's designed to help anybody get a good understanding of what the project is and what those requirements are. So grant agreements are now sent by email and can be signed electronically and are accepted that way. So after a school district signs and returns the grant agreement, OPSC's executive officer will sign both copies and and OPSC will then return a copy with both signatures. So the current status of our projects received. The workload list is what we project to have bond authority for. So as of January 2021, there are 171 new construction projects with a state share of $886.7 million and 756 modernization projects for a state share of $1.69 billion. So the application received beyond bond authority list, or the ARBA list, is the list that all new projects are listed on in date order received. So as of January 2021, the ARBA list, there are 195 new construction projects for a state share of $916 million and 508 modernization projects with a state share of $1.2 billion. Now there is an upcoming presentation that will go into more detail on the list that OPSC keeps. So the full day kindergarten facilities grant program. Now this program is not directly under the school facilities program as it has separate regulations and legislation that was established in 2018. So the FTK program is a one-time grant to increase the number of full day kindergarten classrooms by either constructing new school facilities or retrofitting existing school facilities. Now this allows for funding for existing kindergartners and not growth. So the FTK program is not funded by bond funds. It is a general fund program. And like charter and CTE, projects could receive in advance so that may start their planning and receive approvals with the comfort that they will be receiving state funding. So 100 million just under was split into two rounds, a January 2019 and May 2019 rounds. With that, 100 million was allocated to 45 projects. So this program is currently oversubscribed. Just recently, 200 million was proposed in the 2021-2022 governor's budget that may affect the full day kindergarten program. So as this program is funded by the general fund, each year OPSC monitors the proposed budget for any changes that may affect these programs. If you're looking for more information on FTK or maybe have current projects that are a part of the full day kindergarten program, I recommend going to our OPSC website, and we have a handful of videos that go into greater detail on this program. Okay, so some OPSC online resources and contacts. So OPSC Online is now available for all SFP programs, which include new construction, modernization, facility hardship, seismic mitigation, career tech, and the charter program. It allows districts to do a multitude of things within that program. So you can update school district user information, and you can track eligibility and funding applications in real time. So you're able to see where those projects are at, if they've had letters sent, who that project manager is as well. It allows districts to track versions of submitted applications and compare the resulting grants from each of those versions. It also has the ability for a grant calculator. So this gives districts the opportunity to view potential funding based on different scenarios in your district. There's also a self-service application that allows districts to update their profiles. So district representatives and their emails, phone numbers, things of that nature. Districts can also submit priority funding requests, 5005 submittals, and expenditure reports. So we encourage you to submit your applications through OPSC Online instead of emailing. If a revised application is being submitted through OPSC Online as a response to maybe a 15 or 4-day letter, we recommend you notify your project manager to make sure that those items get processed as quickly as possible. And again, there is an upcoming presentation on OPSC Online, so please make sure and tune in to that for more detailed information on how to access and use OPSC Online. Okay, so the Sfp Data Dashboard, which can be found on OPSC's webpage. All funds are apportioned. It shows all funds that are apportioned up to this point. It's updated nearly in real time, and there is a daily update and is meant to provide a visual representation of that information. So the purpose of having this is so that anyone can see where bond funds have been allocated and how much has been allocated. There are many ways to organize and filter this data as well. You can be filtered through program, through bonds, maybe your school district, a specific school site, or by county. This is an example of how you can filter through a specific assembly member. So we also have the California Open Data Portal. The main difference between the Open Data Portal and the Data Dashboard is that the Open Data Portal goes down to project level detail, such as pupil grants requested, supplemental grants, a part of those projects, etc. This is a raw accounting of where all bond authority is allocated. So it does not show fund release data. So for both the Open Data Portal and the Data Dashboard, there are exportable information that can be filtered to give you exactly what you want and be able to save it. They are both net data, which means it is rescinded. If a project is rescinded, it wouldn't show up on these reports. Okay, so we have our email subscription list. Now, we have given you a lot of information today, and the email subscription list is a great way to stay involved. It will send any information that OPSC deems important, such as State Allocation Board and OPSC meeting notifications, when an SAB agenda has been posted, priority funding announcements, the upcoming meetings the upcoming trainings for this series, as well as any other SAB or OPSC information. So we highly recommend that you subscribe to this email list. So for any questions on the discussed programs today, we recommend you visit our directory of services. This can give you the contacts to each individual program and their supervisors and answer any of those questions you may have. So we have a few pages of resources. These will take you to the direct page for each of the individual funding programs. Okay, any questions?